comfortable. And so it would make me look like I was listening, but I wasn't really listening because I was trying to just deal with my own emotions. I was spacing out. This was most likely misunderstood as aloofness, but again, I didn't understand that. I also remember as a child that I liked to spin a lot, and spinning is a form of what is called stimming, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And in my studying of ASD, I've learned that this is common with many people with autism spectrum disorder. Rocking, flapping, or even banging their head is another way that people with ASD use to calm themselves and cope with situations that become overwhelming. Much of my time is spent thinking, planning, and processing. I tend to be a perfectionist and like to be prepared for any situation I may encounter. Over the years, I have developed many rituals for starting my day, for showering, for bedtime, for routines, as well as many other situations.
Like getting pretty?
I have to have my set things that I do. One way I prepare is kind of rehearsing or role playing. I'm constantly processing what's going on what might happen through my day, and I'm processing what should I say, what should I do, and how would I react in a situation. It may even be as simple as trying to remember what questions to ask when I meet someone new, because those things that come automatically to most people, you have to make lists of all the things that you do as far as even meeting someone. It's different with someone on the spectrum. We tend to almost have a meltdown, not necessarily outwardly, but inwardly, becoming overwhelmed and suddenly feeling awkward, and many times because we don't know how to end a conversation, we either ramble on, monopolizing the conversation, or kind of falter and fade off and walk away. So if you're talking to someone with autism, and they kind of like, all of a sudden look kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing or saying, and they kind of just wander away. They're not being rude, they just kind of lost what they were saying, and they didn't know how to react or respond. Many times we're misunderstood or rude or self-centered, when really it's just we don't know what to say or do next. We freak and just walk away to avoid any more awkwardness. To this day, I still struggle and need time to process my day to come and what happened during the day. My brain is constantly going at times when I should be focusing on something else, and it's difficult to settle down at night to sleep. In fact, my sleep patterns are so messed up sometimes I can't hardly... a lot of people with autism have to take melatonin at night to help them to sleep, because there's a lack of melatonin in the brain for people with autism. So when I get overloaded or overwhelmed, I just have to retreat to a room and have some quiet time, and that's my story. So,
Well done.
I'm done.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and we met another friend from Minnesota today. As a child, I remember I always felt different from the other kids. I didn't have the large motor skill ability to play sports, and that always makes it difficult to connect. However, I remember inventing projects, imagining great adventures, and I never really had any really good friends. Socially, I could not understand all the rules, so I ended up alienating myself from others. My dad was a really bad alcoholic, and he struggled with similar issues as I did. He was verbally abusive to me. My family really didn't understand why I wasn't normal. As a kid, I remember developing coping mechanisms to deal with my autism spectrum disorder. I created, and do create still, many lists in my mind to remember such things as how to act, how to respond to others, how to look people in the eyes, hold their hand, squeeze their hand when I say hello, speak in a strong voice, etc., etc. So now I understand that my issues with developing and maintaining friendships was due to my Asperger's syndrome, which is just a form of high-functioning autism. The things I did for entertainment were read the encyclopedia and science books. I built experimental aircraft, worked on go-karts, I even built a Benson gyrocopter. When I was 12, I developed the magic show and traveled as an illusionist over the state. This was a wonderful coping strategy for me, because all your pattern and dialogue in your show is memorized, even down to the hellos and thank yous and how you respond to people, after the show was over. I was afraid to talk to people. I wasn't afraid to talk to people because I always had this memorized script in my head. As I grew to an adult, I remember many coping strategies I developed. I had detailed lists of how to talk to people. For instance, I have memorized lists of questions I use when meeting somebody. And these things come normally to someone who is non-autistic, or we refer to them as neurotypical. hello, I have a list, and the 3 things I say: where do you live, what do you do for work, and how's the weather? And then I ask them what their favorite thing is. So in the course of a 5-minute conversation, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I don't have a list and I'm in an unusual situation like we are here, we don't know everybody, I have to rely on all my list, to go through things. Otherwise, when someone's stressed with autism, their brain is like a hard drive on your computer. It just locks up and it's done. It won't move. And then we have to wait until the stress passes before we can respond. So the idea is not to get so stressed out so your brain locks up. Our son Caleb and Miriam both have Asperger's, or high-functioning autism. And 12 years ago we started taking Caleb to dozens of doctor's appointments because they didn't understand autism 12 years as much as they do now. And we found out why he struggled with his attention and behavioral issues. And actually it was the public school that diagnosed Caleb with his Asperger's first. The more I learned about Asperger's, guess what? The more I realized that my conditions fit every one of the lists for autism and Asperger's. And I said, note to self, I must have Asperger's. So it wasn't until like 12 years, 6, 7 years later, I finally went to a neuropsychologist and had a formal diagnosis of autism. And what this did for me was, now I understand why I'm so weird, why I look at the world differently. It was actually an affirming thing to me. Even though at the time I still felt a lot of shame about talking about autism, and we found out that sometimes it helps to tell people that we have autism. And then a lot of times people will give you extra grace or be more patient with you. Sometimes they won't, but it's still a greater risk to tell people. So it's only been 3 years we've been talking about our autism spectrum disorder. So that's kind of my story and Jody's story. Now we're going to get into a little bit of the meat of what it means to have autism.
I just wanted to say that these are our kids. You noticed here, this is when we were in Minnesota, and was it Grand Forks actually, North Dakota. And if you notice this lady right here, that's Temple Grandin. And we actually got a chance to meet her. We've actually got a chance to meet her a couple times. We have a video on our website. Is it on the website or on Facebook? Well, either one.
ConnectAutism.org.
ConnectAutism.org. We have an interview that we did with her, a little 5-minute interview, so that was really interesting. But our daughter Miriam, she loves the turtles, she loves karate, and she loves to talk. And
I wonder where she got that
I don't know, I have no clue. And then our son Caleb up there, he actually really loves to build aircraft. He's in the process of building a hang glider right now. He's built 2 experimental, or not experimental, but model airplanes, and he's done a great, he'll build them from plans. He struggles academically with his, the academics, with the math, but boy, I'm telling you, he wants to build something, he will go online and get the plans, and he will follow the instructions, and he can build. I mean, he has built the greatest aircraft.
Excuse me, how old is he?
Caleb is 18, he'll be 19 in May, and then our daughter is 13.
And when we get through, we'll be here after you close at 1, and if you want to talk to us and do some question and answers, we'll answer them then, because I think we'll probably be finishing here in about 15 minutes, and then I'll do some closing. So if there's some time you want to stick around, we'll answer questions for you. Well, we have a threefold vision. Our agency is to inspire, educate, and entertain, because we want to inspire people to greatness. That even though we have disabilities, we have learned to overcome a lot of our disabilities and function in life, and we want to encourage other families, children, parents, and caregivers to help other people succeed. So that's our passion, and we want to do it with humor. Yeah.
One of the things about when we use the word disability, we don't like the word disability. If you notice, Achieve does the same thing, only what they've done is they take the D-I-S and they make it small, and they emphasize the ability. Well, I've coined a word called diff-ability. It's not that you can't do it, it's just you have to go about it a different way. So I believe in the word diff-ability. So the next one is educate. We believe in educating people as far as what is autism, to focus on discovering and developing their abilities, and how you can be an advocate for someone with disabilities or with autism. entertain.
Yeah, be funny. People won't listen to it unless you're funny. You gotta catch their attention, so. When you get us going, we'll be a comedy team here, so we wanna do our presentation. What is autism? A brief overview. Now, we consider ourselves experts with autism. I thought this morning, doctors, they go to college for 4 years, and they go to like 5, 6, 7, 8 years after that, or attorneys. And it's like, well, we've been working on this for our whole lives, and our kids, and so we understand autism from the inside out. I mean, we want to show what it's like to have autism, and how these kids and adults with autism, what's going on in their heads, and what makes it difficult. Autism spectrum disorder, commonly known to or referred to as autism, is a group of brain-based developmental disabilities characterized by impaired social communication, interaction, and restricted repetitive, that's the word, repetitive behaviors, interests, or activities. And that's really, in a nutshell, what autism is. Can you go to the brain?
Yep, I'm going to the brain.
Why is our brain different? Literally, autism is a neurological disorder, it's the way your brain is hardwired. It's actually physically wired a certain way, and that's what produces the autistic type issues. One of the things that autism affects more than anything else, all kids on the spectrum, and the spectrum means some of them have milder forms of it, some of them have medium, some have a severe form. So their functioning is low, medium, or high. It depends on how much of the autism spectrum they have. And every kid with autism is different. Executive functioning. It's your frontal lobe right here. What your executive functioning does, it's like the CEO of a corporation. You have 100 employees and the CEO is not there. Imagine your business, whatever you have, and the boss is gone all the time. That's autism. We have all these intricate pieces that work really, really well. I mean, we do well at all these things, but because of the frontal lobe is been wired differently, we can't process information the same. So it's like the boss is gone. So that's why organization, executive functioning to figure out how to do your schedule, how to get your classwork done, how to get things done, how to get from A to B. Transitions are very difficult for people with autism. New things, so routines really help a lot.
The fact is, let's see here. There, the facts, there we go.
Facts.
1 in 68 children are affected every year by autism. There's 1 in 68 children every year that are being either born or diagnosed or however.
By age 12.
They
use 12 as this.
Okay.
168 comes from age 12.
Okay.
So which there's a lot of kids that haven't been diagnosed yet.
Yeah.
So we think the figures are much higher. That's 1 in 68. It's probably more like 1 in 40 in the United States right now.
And the interesting thing is 1 in 42 boys and 1 in 189 girls. That shows you there's a lot, I mean, there's a big difference there in how boys are affected than girls. However, I have a little bit of an opinion on this. I believe...
You have an opinion?
Oh, of course. I believe that because autism presents itself different in girls, when girls have a different kind of thinking anyway. I mean, if you think about it, girls can process things a little differently, sometimes even a little better than boys can when they're in that age group. When you think about it, I really think that it's just the fact that they're not being diagnosed as easily because they tend to be, more quiet, or they're readers. They're the ones that are, like with ADHD, a lot of times they're not as hyperactive. They tend to be daydreamers. They'll be, like in dreamland. That's how they diagnose ADHD. I think it's similar in the diagnosing of with autism. So, but one of the things that we've seen is that in the last 10 years. Has it been the last 10 years? It's gone up like from 150, 1 in 150, then it was 1 in 88, and now it's 1 in 68. That's pretty...
That was the beginning of last year.
Right,
so
that's a pretty big increase.
This year again, they'll come out, the CDC will come up with new diagnosis, and they figure in 10 years, think of this, very realistic, watch the figures, in 10 years, 1 out of every 2 children born in America will have autism. If you watch, it's going up. 5 years, it's going to be probably 1 in 8, 1 in 4. It's just going up, 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 up. So it's something that we need to address as a community. We just address as an educational system, as cities, as agencies, and that's what we want to help educate people and prepare them for what's coming with the kids and adults that are growing up. What do we got here?
Brain gym.
Brain gym. We're talking about some of the therapies that help people with autism. One of them is a really simple exercises that work, that help create connections in the brain. You know, our agency is called connectautism.org. I'll talk about brain gym for a minute. Jody's going to give you our card. But brain gym, and some of the therapists and those in the school system would heard, it's an exercise that's done to help connect the sides of the brain. And it involves crossing over things between the left and right side of the brain. I'm going to show you a couple of them. And it would be amazing how 5-10 minutes of this a day can help. A brain gym would, you know, you're connecting the sides of the brain, so you can go 1, connect, 2, connect, 3, or this one is really hard for me to do, and I've practiced it, but this one's really hard. So you're connecting one side of the brain to the other, and just some simple exercises like this without falling over. The other one. There's like 5 or 6, but there's some really simple things that you could do. So a lot of it isn't rocket science. Parents can learn a lot of simple things that can help with their kids at home. A lot of them get a lot of services from therapists, occupational therapists that'll do things similar to that. Speech therapists that will help. There are treatments that help a lot. There's no cure for autism. You're always going to have it because it's the way your brain is wired. But a lot of things can help with education help and proper therapy. There's music therapy, which helps connect the two sides of the brains. Lots of other different kinds of therapies.
Well, there's equine therapy, which is, horse therapy, which really works. There's 2 kinds. There's, riding, and then there's one that they just do more just interacting with the horses, which is really awesome. The next slide is blank. What's on it? Oh, there we go. That's not it. There we go. Debunking false concepts of autism. There's a lot of false concepts about autism out there. One of the things that they say is, well, the autism person has to change. The reality is the autism person can't change.
A lot of it, that's true.
There's a lot of improvements that can be made, and there's coping skills that can be made and developed, but the reality is their brain's not going to change. Music therapy really helps a lot with connecting brain, making those brain connections, but behaviors, there can be some modification with behaviors, but there's usually a reason for the behaviors. If you're seeing a child melting down, there's usually a reason for it. They're not just going off because they feel like it and they want to make you mad. There's a reason behind it.
And that's if you take nothing away, you want to help kids with autism, think of this. They say follow the money trail. Follow the behavior trail. There's always a reason for the behavior. Kids with autism think through everything. They don't just have a meltdown. Sometimes a few of the kids get a little aggressive. They'll get angry and push somebody. A lot of them aren't aggressive, but some are. And there's always a reason why every behavior, if they're melting down during a test, if something's going on, the lights may be flickering and driving them insane. Because a lot of people with autism, they can see the frequencies of the fluorescent light and it drives them crazy. They can see every little blink, blink, blink. It's going like 50,000 times a second or something.
You wouldn't see it, but
and they see it and like freak out. And you might not know that. And that's why they have the meltdown. So if you can be the detective and find out what it is and come in the back door and help them. So try to find out why the behavior. Nothing they've ever done is just because they want to be bad and naughty.
Or because they want to get away with something.
Even when they're little, there's always a reason for what they do. That's how the person with autism, their brain works.
Even when they're teenagers. Like
we have teenagers, yeah.
Now, the question is, what about changing the world? What about helping the world become an advocate for these kids and young adults growing up? The other one is stimming is bad. Make them stop flapping, or make them stop.
Give them a doggy treat, then hold their hands. I'm sorry, we're making fun of some
guy. He's
some therapies we don't think work real well. They force them to stop stimming, and they give them a doggy treat, or not a doggy treat. They give them.
Almost
I'm sorry, I call it a doggy treat. Because it's very complex. A lot of therapies work. A lot of these, when you get to adults with autism and they start talking, they can articulate things. They're sharing now about their experiences when they were younger and what helped and what didn't help. So we've been doing a lot of research in what exactly really helps and what doesn't help.
Because right now we're actually coming into a season where there has not been a lot of research in the adults with autism, and we're working with, putting together a program that is going to work with adults with autism and helping them to get into the...
Sorry, what is stimming? Stimming is a behavior...
Repetitive behavior.
...that's done to, you know what it does? It calms the person with autism, okay? Here's Blair. Ever since he was 1 year old. That's not a nervous thing. That's a form of stemming. Your brain is going so fast, it starts to calm down your brain.
Rocking is another one.
I love rocking chairs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just nervous energy, it's actually calming your brain. And the kids with lower function, so when they start to get stressed, this means I'm stressed. Let's try to find out why I'm so stressed. Don't just keep forcing me. More, move. You have to find out why they're doing something first, or they'll be like an iron, solid stone statue. You won't get them to move. If they lock up, we call it lock up, when our brains lock up or something locks up. There's nobody on earth that can change their brain until they calm down, they're de-stress. A heavy blanket will help too, or pressure.
Yeah.
Jody doesn't like this, I know, but I like it. Someone come put pressure, oh, the world's better now. It calms, it's a form of stemming, which is calming. So to stop the stemming, some people want to stop all the behaviors. Well, this isn't really socially acceptable, but, so you may be able to stop some of them, you may not be. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left here.
Okay. Autistic people have no empathy or feelings. That's false. They do. They just can't express them as well. They can't show. They don't know how to. They don't know how to, smile a lot of times. My son, he doesn't smile a lot. When he does, he's enjoying something. But so that's false. They need more socialization. Where'd it go?
Well, forced. A lot of people think that some people with autism do not want to have any friends. They don't want to socialize. That may be the best thing for them. A lot of them do like to socialize, would like to have friends, but they can't because of they don't understand social cues. So you have to find out what works. So more socialization isn't always the answer. It helps for those that want to, but if they're satisfied being by themselves, well, part of what our agency wants to do is do training young adults in job incubation, entrepreneurial, home businesses they can do. Someone can work on the computer by themselves, would be the best thing in the world, to run a business by themselves at home.
Just with the supports, they just need those supports in place to help them to be able to accomplish that. Other things you should know about autism, or working with someone with autism. Let's see, where is it? Traditional counseling and therapy methods are not always effective. We've already kind of gone over that.
Basically because autism is still very new. It's in its infancy. The understanding, the treatments, they're all kind of, experimental right now. Everything's really experimental. We don't have enough history and documentation to really prove which therapy is the best. A lot of them help, so we'll figure that out. But so you have to be flexible in working with kids and adults.
Down syndrome and intellectual disabilities are actually different from autism. They're not the same. Autism, you have a tendency to have kids that are more confrontative. They like to get in your face. They're not easily motivated or moved around. Whereas
they have strong ideas and opinions that get locked in their brain, and they'll fight you on that one point. They'll argue that one point for 8 hours if you let them, because it just gets stuck there. That's part of the autism spectrum disorder, and that's why neurotypical have to learn more patience. We can integrate a lot more people if they just, can be direct and say, you're monologuing right now. People with autism need to be spoken to black and white, direct.
Their feelings
nuances,
are generally not hurt.
Idioms are hard.
Speak directly to them. So, here's some things not to say to someone with autism.
Let's keep it
just
at the end.
Okay.
I want to talk about what we're doing.
First thing.
The blank line.
You seem so normal.
That's not a nice thing to say. I mean, it sounds polite, but, you know, because they look at us, and you guys would probably say this, so I'm going to tell you not to say it, but you look so normal. You don't look like you have problems.
You don't look weird to me.
Well, we have so many coping mechanisms going on at any given time, and that's why when it gets toward the middle of the day, the end of the day, we get really tired because we're running so much processing to
There's our son Caleb right there.
keep everything. Yeah, let's look at Caleb.
We all have
He's
issues.
doing a great job too.
He
working.
is. We love.
All right, let's get to
We
our.
all have issues of some kind, which we do. But are your issues that you have, or your struggles, debilitating? Can they be debilitating? And people with autism don't have a sense of humor. Well, that's not true.
You may not get it, but they do have a sense of humor. Sometimes it's so dry, it's past the driest form of humor. Caleb will say something about a day and a half later, oh, now I know.
Oh, now I know what he was saying.
Now it's funny.
Autism isn't real. Besides, I don't like to label people. Well, you know what? Labels aren't bad. Labels are a way of identifying issues that we can deal, so we can deal with them. You know what I mean? I mean, if we don't label things, sometimes we can't figure out what to do about them. ConnectAutism.org.
This is our agency, and this is our draft of our agency we've been putting together. So if you want to pick up a brochure before you leave, Connect Autism, it talks about the Connect Autism Academy we're putting together. It's going to be a private school that's going to operate on private funding. It's not going to be a public school where I use public funding, but it's going to provide all kinds of different types of individual education for kids and young adults with autism.
One of the other things is a thrift store. We're going to open a thrift store that will provide vocational training and help them to learn how to work in a business setting or in a public setting so that they can, and it'll be a safe environment, because if they do start to get stressed and you can tell, okay, they're starting to overload, they're not going to be able to handle this customer, because we all know that sometimes we have difficult customers and they don't care if someone has autism or a disability. They just want to be served how they need to be served. And
here's a good example sometimes of, there's somebody that is, they'll just say, that hat is ugly that you're wearing. To them it's not rude, it's just, I'm just making a statement. Some days they won't even know that's rude. They're not intending to be rude, but they'll be so literal in making statements similar to that.
Or it might be just a statement of preference. I don't like that hat. Well, it doesn't matter that you like the hat. They're just trying to tell you that they don't really like that hat.
And if you inquire deeper in what they're saying, oh, what you're saying, don't you like, oh, I don't like that hat. Oh, you're a nice person.